I met Lena when I was 24, and back then, everything about her felt like movement. She laughed with her whole body, threw herself into late-night ideas that never quite made sense, danced barefoot on cold kitchen tiles because music had to be felt, not just heard. We'd been together 6 years by the time she brought it up. 6 years of layered mornings and shared toothbrush cups, of the kind of domestic rhythm that becomes invisible when it's working. I'd gotten used to her hair curled against my shoulder in the mornings, the sound of her coffee grinder at 7:12 a.m. like a private symphony. That night she chose the softest approach possible. We were sitting on the balcony, wrapped in an old quilt, watching the rain. She had her knees pulled up, chin resting on them, hair slightly damp from the drizzle. It was a night made for tenderness. "Can I ask you something weird?" she said. My stomach did the small involuntary drop it always did before big conversations. But I smiled anyway. "You always can." "It's not bad," she added quickly. "Just honest." I didn't know yet that when Lena said honest, what she often meant was destabilizing. She toyed with the ring on her thumb, a nervous habit, and then, lightly, like dropping a feather into a quiet lake. "What would you think about polyamory?" I stared at her. The question didn't quite land at first. "Polyamory? Yeah." She said it gently, almost academically. Like, opening the relationship. But, in a thoughtful way. With boundaries. I laughed, reflexively. "Where's this coming from?" Her shoulders rose and fell. "I've been reading. Thinking. We've been together a long time, Noah. I love you. You know I love you." "Yeah," I said cautiously. "But I don't want to wake up one day and feel like I've missed something. I've never explored anything else, not really. And I want to, I guess, understand myself more. While still being with you." I said nothing at first. Rain ticked softly against the balcony railing. She rushed in to fill the silence. "It wouldn't change us. I mean, we'd set clear rules. I just don't want to feel trapped by something beautiful. Does that make sense?" The phrase hit me like an elegant knife. Trapped by something beautiful. There it was, the gentle destabilization. The conversation that begins like a feather and ends like an earthquake. We talked for hours. Or rather, Lena talked and I clutched at pieces of logic, trying to make sense of the storm she was quietly inviting into our house. She reassured me with phrases she'd clearly rehearsed. It would only be me at first, just to explore how I feel. "You're my anchor. I could never stop loving you. It doesn't have to mean less, it could mean more." I tried to argue. I tried to explain what it would feel like, her being with someone else while I stayed home pretending to be evolved. She countered each concern with a soft smile and an answer that sounded reasonable but somehow hollow. She was so calm, so certain, so her, the kind of confidence that makes you feel like you're the one being small-minded. By 2 a.m., I wasn't agreeing. But I also wasn't saying no. And she knew it. Over the next few weeks, the idea became real. She brought it up over dinner like it was a logistical puzzle to solve. "So, if we were to do this, what would boundaries look like for you?" It was never if, it was always when. I tried to set rules. She nodded at some, dismissed others with that soft, reasoned voice. Eventually, it became clear this was going to happen on her terms. She wouldn't say it outright, but her wording gave her away. "I think, at least for now, it makes sense if only I explore connections. You've never really been interested in dating apps or casual stuff, right?" I stared at her across the table, fork paused midair. "That's not the point. I just don't want us to bite off too much at once," she said. "I don't want to lose what we have." But she was the one asking to change it. The night she went on her first date was a quiet Saturday. She'd been humming around the apartment all day, nervous and glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. She wore a black dress I loved, simple, elegant, the one she usually saved for anniversaries. I remember standing in the doorway, watching her put on lipstick in the mirror. She looked like a woman at the beginning of something. "You look beautiful," I said, voice low. She turned, smiled softly. "Thanks, babe." I wanted to ask her to stay. I didn't. Because that would have meant being the villain in her story of liberation. I waited at home. I tried to watch a movie. I didn't absorb a single frame. I opened a beer. It tasted like nothing. I stared at the clock until the hands blurred into noise. She came home after midnight, smelling like wind and perfume. There was a flush on her cheeks, a softness I recognized. She'd always glowed like that after good nights. I asked how it was. She said, "Nice. Just talking." Nothing happened. I nodded, as if it mattered. She curled up next to me on the couch like she hadn't just split us in two. Over the following weeks, her life began to change in slow, invisible increments. She got new clothes. New apps. New smiles she didn't share with me. She stayed out late. She began texting with the careful, guilty posture of someone hiding a secret, though she insisted everything was open and transparent. I tried to convince myself I was okay. I told myself this was growth. Evolution. Modern love. But when she laughed at something on her phone one night, head thrown back, eyes sparkling, the sound was familiar, but it wasn't for me anymore. Something cracked then. Quietly. Like a floorboard no one else hears. One night, I met her friend group for drinks. I'd known most of them for years, but there was someone new, Amara. She joined their circle through work. She was quiet at first, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who doesn't speak unless she has something worth saying. While Lena floated around the table in a cloud of new energy, I ended up talking to Amara. She asked me what I did. What I liked. Real questions. No filters. We laughed about something stupid, probably my attempt at pretending I was fine. When Lena leaned over to kiss me on the cheek mid-conversation, I caught the faint scent of another man's cologne. I don't think she noticed how stiffly I returned the kiss. But Amara did. Her eyes lingered for a heartbeat too long. Weeks passed. The open relationship became her new normal and my new silence. She dated 2 guys. Then 3. She described some of it to me, just so we're open and honest. Every word felt like a scalpel. She wasn't cruel. Not overtly. But the asymmetry was brutal. She was living while I was enduring. The night the storm really formed was a Tuesday. She came home late again. I was sitting in the living room, lights low, laptop abandoned. She was glowing. Hair a little messy. A mark on her neck she didn't bother to hide. I asked her, "Do you ever think about what this is doing to me?" She frowned slightly, like I'd brought up something impolite at a dinner party. We talked about this, Noah. We set boundaries. You set boundaries. She crossed her arms, defensive. I asked you what you wanted. Yeah, and then you told me why everything I wanted was wrong. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she sighed. If this is too much for you, Noah, you can say so. I don't want you to feel trapped. The irony was a blade. I was the one who had to leave if I couldn't handle the freedom she wanted. Later that week, Amara messaged me. Just something casual, a meme, then a, "Hey, how are you holding up?" I don't know why I answered honestly. We ended up talking for 2 hours. She didn't say things to make me feel better. She just listened. Asked questions. Made space. It wasn't flirtation. Not yet. It was oxygen. And in the quiet between messages, I realized something. Lena had created a world where only her desires mattered. And I had agreed to live in it. But that night was the first time in months I felt the outline of myself again. I started spending more time with Amara. Not in some dramatic, cheating way, not yet. It began quietly, the way a plant starts growing in a crack in the pavement. She texted. I replied. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I said yes. It felt uncomplicated. That was the most dangerous part. Amara wasn't part of my shared history with Lena. She wasn't the balcony where the poly conversation began, or the black dress that smelled of someone else's perfume. She didn't carry the weight of all the versions of us we used to be. With Amara, I could breathe without performing resilience. The first time we met alone, it was at a little cafe with fogged windows and wobbly tables. She wore a gray sweater, hair tied up, no makeup. She looked at me like she saw me, not the version of me forced into being understanding and evolved. "How are you really doing?" she asked. I almost laughed. No one had asked me that without expecting me to say I'm fine. "I don't know," I said. That's not a bad answer. We talked for hours. Not about Lena. Not about polyamory. About music, travel, the kind of lives we imagined when we were younger. There was no rush. Just presence. When I got home that night, Lena was already asleep, curled on her side of the bed. I slid in next to her, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing, and realized something terrifying. I hadn't missed her that evening. Over the next weeks, Lena's life kept expanding outward while mine started to expand inward. She had dates, I had conversations. She came home glowing, I came home grounded. She told me stories about new people in her orbit, laughing lightly, assuming I was fine because I didn't protest. The truth was quieter than that. I had simply stopped expecting anything from her. One night, she invited one of the guys she was seeing, a tall, soft-voiced painter named Julian, to a group dinner with friends. She asked me casually over breakfast, as if asking whether I preferred rice or pasta for dinner. "Julian might swing by tonight." "Cool." I froze with my spoon in the bowl. "Cool." She frowned slightly. "We agreed this could be part of it." "Yeah, I just didn't realize I'd be third-wheeling at my own dinner table." She set down her coffee, that careful tone slipping into her voice, the one she used when she wanted to sound rational and make me feel irrational. "Noah. This is part of what we said we'd explore." "No. This is what you wanted to explore." I stopped before the word prop slipped out. She exhaled. "If this is too much, say so." That phrase again. Her safety net. She could blow up our foundation, and if I flinched, it was me who wasn't ready. Julian came. He was kind, polite, unnervingly gentle. He complimented the wine, asked about my work. I hated him precisely because he wasn't an easy villain. Lena glowed that night. She looked at him with a softness I used to think was mine alone. She sat next to him, laughed at his jokes, leaned in close. I laughed too, at the right moments, because if I didn't, I'd look bitter. And bitterness made me the problem. Inside, though, something shifted. I realized I wasn't jealous. Not exactly. I was absent, like someone watching a life they used to live through a fogged window. Later, when he left, she came up to me, wrapped her arms around my waist. "Thank you," she whispered. "For being so amazing." The way she said amazing felt like a pat on the head. I kissed her back. Not out of love. Out of habit. Amara and I kept orbiting closer without touching. She wasn't trying to be a replacement, and I wasn't trying to turn her into one. She just existed like a lighthouse when I was lost at sea. One night, after another too-long dinner where Lena texted Julian under the table, I met Amara for a late walk. The air was cold, the streets mostly empty. She wore a long coat and boots that clicked softly against the pavement. I told her everything that night, not in a flood, but in quiet, careful sentences. She listened without interrupting. She didn't try to fix anything. And then she said something that landed like a quiet explosion. "You know, Noah, you don't have to be okay with being treated like a supporting character in your own relationship." I stopped walking. She met my eyes steadily. "She's writing the story. You're just holding the camera." The next day, Lena told me she was going on a weekend trip with Julian. She said it while tying her hair up, like it was logistics, like asking me to water the plants while she was gone. I stared at her. "You're what?" "It's just 2 nights," she said. "He has a cabin outside the city." My chest felt tight, but not in the way it used to. More like watching a wall you once built being repurposed by someone else. She caught my expression and softened her voice. "Babe. You said you were okay with this." "No," I said, my voice steady for once. "I said I was trying." She blinked, like the distinction had never occurred to her. That weekend, the apartment was silent. For the first time in months, I didn't try to fill the silence with distraction. I met Amara at her place. A small apartment lined with plants and second-hand books. She made tea. We sat on the floor, leaning against the couch. "I feel like I'm watching my life from outside," I admitted. She tilted her head. Then maybe it's time to step back in. I looked at her. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't asking me to be brave. She was just stating something true. When Lena came home Sunday evening, she was glowing. Hair a little tangled from the wind. That same flush she'd had after her first date. She launched into stories about the cabin, the stars, the lake, how freeing it felt. I listened, quietly. The way a stranger might listen to someone else's love story. And then I realized something sharp and ugly. She wasn't just in love with the idea of polyamory. She was in love with the power it gave her. A week later, Amara invited me to a small get-together with her friends. Just a few people, drinks, music, soft laughter. I almost said no, out of reflex, out of the quiet loyalty to a woman who had stopped choosing me months ago. But I went. Amara's world was quieter than Lena's, less performative. People actually talked to each other. Laughed like it mattered. I wasn't Lena's partner there. I was Noah. At one point, Amara and I were alone in the kitchen. The music drifted in softly from the living room. She reached for a glass on the counter, and for a split second, our hands touched. It wasn't a spark. It was a pulse. That night, after everyone left, she walked me to the door. It would have been easy to step forward, to cross the line. But I didn't. Because if I did it out of revenge, it would make me just as small as the version of me she'd already diminished. Instead, I said, quietly, thank you. For what? For reminding me I'm still here. She looked at me for a long moment. Then don't disappear again. Back home, Lena was sitting on the couch in one of Julian's hoodies. She looked up from her phone and smiled like nothing was wrong. Hey, babe. How was your night? I stared at her, this woman who used to feel like home. She didn't even see me anymore. She saw a placeholder. A safety net. Someone who would stay, no matter how far she wandered. It was good, I said simply. And for the first time, I wasn't saying it to appease her. I was just telling the truth. The power shift was slow. Almost invisible. She kept living her expanding life. But something in me had stopped orbiting around her. When she talked about Julian, I didn't flinch. When she came home late, I didn't wait up. When she asked where I was going, I didn't offer explanations. She noticed. Not all at once, but in little, fractured glances. She'd reach for my hand while watching a movie and find it resting on my knee instead of hers. She'd tell me about her plans and get silence instead of reassurance. She'd lean into me and feel my stillness instead of softness. Control was a currency she no longer held. One night, she asked, too casually, "You've been hanging out with Amara a lot." I looked up from my book. Yeah. Her smile faltered. Just as friends, right? I closed the book slowly. Lena, when you started seeing other people, I didn't interrogate you like this. That's different, she snapped, before catching herself. Is it? Her throat tightened, just barely. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even move. You wanted a world where your rules were the only ones that mattered. I didn't say yes to that. I just didn't fight. Noah. I'm done being the only one who sacrifices. The silence between us after that wasn't empty. It was thick, like a storm cloud settling over the room. She wanted to be free but still kept. I had stopped being kept. She started texting me more when she was out. Miss you. Thinking of you. Messages she hadn't sent in months. I didn't rush to reply. The first time Amara kissed me, it wasn't planned. We'd gone for another late-night walk, and I'd told her I didn't know who I was in my relationship anymore. She stepped closer, eyes searching mine. Then maybe it's time to be someone new. And then she kissed me. Soft. Not claiming. Just offering. The world didn't explode. It just clicked into place. I didn't feel guilt. I felt presence. When I got home that night, Lena was waiting in the living room. She was sitting cross-legged on the couch, arms folded, eyes tight. Where were you? Out. With Amara? Yes. A long silence. Then, quietly, "Did anything happen?" I didn't lie. "Yeah." Her breath hitched like she hadn't believed I could cross that line. Like she thought my role was to absorb, not act. "Noah," she whispered, "what the fuck?" I tilted my head. "This is what you wanted." "No. Not this." "What's the difference?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. The days after that were strange. She grew clingy. Needy, even. The woman who had glowed in freedom now kept reaching for the anchor she'd assumed would never drift. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. But inside, the tectonic plates of our relationship had shifted. She was no longer untouchable. Amara wasn't a replacement. She was a mirror. She'd shown me how small I'd let myself become. And Lena could feel it. In every quiet dinner. In every unanswered text. In every night I didn't ask her when she was coming home. One evening, she asked, voice tight, "Are you in love with her?" I didn't answer right away. I watched her fidget, something she hadn't done in a long time. "It's not about love," I said finally. "It's about me remembering I'm allowed to matter." She flinched. "You've always mattered." "Not to you, Lena. Not in the way that counts." That night she cried. Not like someone heartbroken, like someone whose game had stopped working the way she designed it. And for the first time since the night she said polyamory, I didn't comfort her. I don't remember the exact night Lena realized she'd lost control of the story, but I remember the look in her eyes. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak. It was fear. The kind of fear people feel when they realize the world they built around themselves isn't bending anymore. It started with something small. She came home early from seeing Julian. Earlier than usual. It was a Friday. I was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables for dinner. I hadn't asked where she was going, or when she'd be back. That, in itself, had become a quiet revolution. She dropped her bag on the counter and stood there, watching me. Not speaking. Finally she said, "I feel like I'm losing you." I set the knife down gently. "That's because you are." Her breath caught. She hadn't expected me to say it that way. Not softly. Not without anger. Just the truth, standing naked between us. For months, she'd had the power. She was the one defining terms, bending the world, making me orbit her expanding constellation of experiences. And I had complied. Not because I believed in it, but because I thought love meant endurance. But love isn't endurance. Love, at least the kind that lasts, has to be mutual gravity. Not one person floating while the other tethers them down. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. But you made it happen." Her voice cracked, small. "I just wanted to feel free. And I just wanted to matter." We stood there in the kitchen like strangers. Same walls, same air, entirely different worlds. The next day, she asked me to talk. Not the way she used to, measured, rational, pre-argued in her head. This time she was unsettled. Messy. We sat on the couch, facing each other. The late afternoon light painted thin gold lines across the floor. She started crying before she said anything. And it was real, not manipulative, not performative. Just a woman realizing her choices had consequences. "I thought I could do this without losing you," she said. "I thought you'd understand." "I did understand," I said quietly. "You just didn't care what it cost me." She winced. But she didn't argue. She couldn't. Because she'd always framed my pain as a sign of my weakness, not a sign of her selfishness. "You're the love of my life, Noah." I almost laughed. "Then why did you build a life without me in it?" She reached out, instinctively. I didn't move closer. That night, she stayed in bed next to me like she used to. But the air between us was foreign. She wasn't the Lena from 6 years ago. And I wasn't the Noah who silently agreed to anything in the name of love. We lay there like two people trying to remember how to breathe in the same rhythm. A few days later, it happened, the real confrontation. She came to me after work, hair a little messy, still in her blazer. I ended things with Julian, she blurted, like that would fix something. I told him I can't. I don't want this anymore. I didn't react. I want to focus on us, she continued. I want to close everything else and just get back what we had. There it was. The retrieval plan. The unspoken belief that she could step out of the story for a while, live her freedom, then come back when she wanted the comfort again. I looked at her slowly. You don't get to put us in storage and take us back out when it suits you. Her face went pale. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. She stepped closer. We can fix this. I shook my head. We can't. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe she didn't. Because the man standing in front of her wasn't built from her rules anymore. She whispered, "Is this about Amara?" I let the silence answer her. Her jaw tightened, hurt flooding into her voice. You fell for her. I met her eyes. I fell for myself first. She flinched. That was the real wound. Not that I'd kissed someone else. But that I'd stopped revolving around her son. We argued then, not like the old fights with tight control and careful negotiation. This one was raw. Messy. The kind of argument that leaves the walls echoing afterward. She accused me of betrayal. I told her I'd spent months living inside hers. She said she'd made a mistake. I said so had I, believing love meant being small. She shouted that she never wanted to hurt me. I said she never wanted to see she was hurting me. And in the middle of it, she started crying again. But I didn't step forward to hold her. For the first time, her tears were hers to carry. The next few days felt like walking through the ruins of a house that used to be home. Everything familiar. Everything broken. She tried to fix things the way she used to fix everything, with late-night confessions, soft apologies, nostalgic touches. But the foundation had shifted. The old US didn't exist anymore. She killed it with the first sentence on the balcony months ago. I buried it when I finally remembered I mattered. One night, she said, "If I close everything, if I do whatever it takes, will you stay?" It should have felt powerful, being the one with the choice. But it didn't. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff I'd already stepped away from. I don't want to be chosen because you're afraid to lose, I said. She went still. I want to be chosen because you saw me the whole time, I added. And you didn't. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't try to wipe them away. I did. I just forgot how much. Then it's too late. The breakup wasn't a single event. It was a series of quiet, painful unravelings over a week. The conversation. The night on the couch. The silent breakfasts. Until one morning, she packed a suitcase. Just a few things. Enough to stay at a friend's. She paused at the door, eyes red and tired. I thought we'd make it through anything. So did I said softly. But we can't make it through something you burned on purpose. She nodded once, a broken kind of acceptance. Then she left. For a long time after she was gone, I sat in the silence she used to fill. I thought I'd feel anger, or grief, or relief. But what I felt most was stillness. Like a pressure had finally lifted. I didn't rush to fill the void. I didn't run to Amara like a rebound. I just sat with myself. The version of me that I had abandoned when I said yes to something that hollowed me out. Amara didn't push. She never had. When she came by a week later, she didn't ask, "So what now?" She just sat with me on the balcony, the same balcony where everything had begun, the rain whispering against the railing. She glanced at me. "You okay?" I nodded. For the first time in a long time, yeah. We didn't define anything that night. We didn't need to. She wasn't a victory or a weapon. She was a choice I could make freely, without being cornered by someone else's idea of love. When she reached for my hand, I let her. Lena texted a few times after that. Not to rekindle, just small messages that smelled like nostalgia. "Hope you're doing okay. Julian asked about you. I keep expecting to find you in the kitchen." I answered once. Politely. And then I didn't anymore. Not out of cruelty. Out of peace. Months later, I saw her by accident at a bar. She was with friends, laughing. She caught my eye across the room. There was no malice there. No pleading. Just two people who used to know each other's breathing. She gave me a small, sad smile. I returned it. The story didn't end with fireworks or revenge or poetic karma. It ended like most real stories do, quietly, after everything loud had already been said. Amara and I didn't rush. We took it slow. Carefully. Respectfully. She wasn't my new anchor. She was just someone walking beside me while I relearned how to hold myself up. Sometimes, at night, I still think about that first conversation on the balcony. About Lena asking me, "What would you think about polyamory?" And I wonder how different things could have been if she'd wanted to explore without erasing me in the process. But then I remember, love isn't about who comes first. It's about who stays when things are no longer easy. And I had stayed long after she'd left in every way that mattered. There's a kind of empowerment people don't talk about often. It isn't loud. It isn't triumphant. It's quiet. It's waking up in the morning and realizing you're no longer trying to be enough for someone who stopped seeing you. It's breathing without waiting for permission. The last thing Lena ever said to me, months later when she came by to pick up the last of her things, was, "I hope you find someone who never makes you feel small again." I looked at her and said, "I already did." She gave me a sad, almost proud look. And then she left for good. On nights when the rain comes down soft and steady, Amara and I sit on that same balcony. She doesn't fill the silence. She doesn't have to. This isn't a grand ending. This is a quiet beginning.